Okay, good morning, class. Today, we will be learning about the three main composers from the classical time period. Can anyone tell me what they know about the classical time period? Kind of a vague question, but any? Do you know, first of all, what the dates are? No. The dates of the classical time period are 1730 to 1820, which means that before the classical time period was the Baroque time period, and after the classical period was the Romantic time period. Okay, so the first composer that I will be talking about is known as the father of the symphony and was born in 1732, which is just about the exact time the classical period started. Does anyone know who this composer is?
Bach.
No.
No.
Close. Good guess, though.
Mozart.
No. This first composer is Joseph Haydn. Joseph Haydn was, he was known as the master of the quartet. Do you know what a quartet is?
Four.
Yes, four. And in our time now, a quartet could be a brass quartet, a cappella quartet singing, but in Haydn's time it would most likely have been string quartet with violins, a cello maybe. So maybe slightly different than our time now, but he spent the majority of his time writing symphonies and quartets. And also now, when a musician is very famous, like who's a famous musician now? Like Jay-Z or something like that. Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj will make music and put it on the internet so everybody can see. But back in Haydn's time, they didn't have that. So if you wanted to hear a specific musician a lot, you had to be largely wealthy. And the prince of a place in Austria was called Nicholas Esterhazy. And he owned this huge mansion. And what he did, since he liked Haydn so much, is he paid Haydn to live with him and to be a musician and would write music so that his family, the Esterhazy family, could listen to it whenever they wanted, all the time. Now, the next composer was born in Salzburg, which is now in Austria, and his first composition was at 5 years old. Do any of you know who it is?
That one's Mozart.
Correct, it's Mozart. His real name is Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and he was definitely a child prodigy. His father took him around places playing piano, violin, bits, and he was composing, like I said, at 5 years old. This is just a guess. Do you have a guess on how many works Mozart composed in his lifetime? Think big.
5,722.
Maybe a little bit smaller than 5,000.
I heard it was like 600?
Yes, 600.
5,000 would have been more impressive.
It is. Maybe, we're not quite sure exactly on the number, but we do know it's over 600. The thing that's funny about Mozart is his work was written in such a way, and you hear it and you think, oh, this is a very like high-class music, or at least I do. I hear it, it's very pretty. But then when you read about Mozart's lifestyle, it's very crazy, and he runs around and meets a lot of girls and just does this lifestyle that you wouldn't really associate the music with this lifestyle. But that created problems in his life because he created 600 works, and he's Mozart, one of the most famous composers ever. So he had to have been making a lot of money, but he actually lived a lot of his life being poor because he was so crazy, and he would spend money all the time. Anywhere he went, he would just buy lavish things. And so this created a problem of being in debt, sort of, where he was no longer, or towards the end of his life, he was writing a lot of works. Like the majority of his works came at the end of his life because he had to keep bringing in an income and pleasing people because he had such a large following. And so Haydn, if we remember, he wrote largely symphonies and quartets. What Mozart did was he really wrote a lot of operas. Some famous is Die Zauberflöte, which in English is the Magic Flute. He wrote Der Marriage of Figaro. He wrote a lot of operas. And so in his later years, like I said, he was writing a lot. He was getting sick. His health was going poor, and he was writing a requiem. Do any of you know what a requiem means? Any guesses?
Requiem, I think means rest, right?
Yes, so you often play requiems at funeral. Not always, but you can. And so he was writing his requiem while he was fearing his death, sort of. And you can hear it in his work. It's, for me personally, and I don't want to say this as the fact, but I think it's one of his more emotional pieces. And you can hear sort of death creeping in. And the story of his requiem is he died before he could finish the entire work. So there's debate on who he told to finish it, or if he told people how to finish it, but he didn't finish the whole piece, which is quite unusual. The next composer is born on 1770 and died on 1827, and was sort of the last main composer of the classical time period. Do you have any guesses on who this is?
No.
His last name starts with a B.
Bach.
It's not Bach.
Dang it.
Is it Beethoven?
It is.
Oh, I know that.
His full name is Ludwig van Beethoven, and the first two composers were from Austria, and Beethoven is actually from Germany. And there's speculation on if Haydn and Mozart ever officially met, but there is confirmation that Beethoven studied under Haydn, and Haydn thought very highly of Beethoven, his youth, and Beethoven greatly respected Haydn. There was a nice relationship. Like I said earlier, Beethoven was a transition from the classical time period to a romantic time period. Do you know what that means? The difference between romantic and classical? In classical, they used a lot of the same chord progressions, and it was the form was important. Sonata form or the symphony or the quartet everything was pretty similar. But in romantic time periods, people started writing more from their emotions, I would say, and they started using, it was more of a free-flowing style of music. And so Beethoven, while he still had this form, in the later years of his life, he started composing with this more emotional. And I don't want to make it seem like the classical composers didn't have emotion in their music, because they most certainly did. But Beethoven started leaning towards, loosening the form and making his own style. And some of Beethoven's most famous piano works is his Moonlight Sonata and his Pathetique Symphony. And those are good examples of his later works in his life, leaning towards the romantic time period. And the funny story about Beethoven is, towards the end of his life, he had such bad hearing, and he would write piano pieces and he couldn't hear it, so he literally had to put his head on the piano so he could hear. And the very last symphony he wrote was the Ninth Symphony, and when they premiered the work, they finished, and the audience loved it so much they stood and started clapping and cheering, and Beethoven couldn't hear it. He was just facing his band and he was just smiling because, we finished it and it went all right. And his violinist went and turned him around so he could see the audience standing and clapping and cheering. And I think that's, me, I have perfect hearing and I can't compose very well. And he couldn't hear at all, and he was writing this Ninth Symphony, which is just gorgeous. So, now that we've talked about this, I will review quick. Can we list the three classical composers, the main classical composers? Starting with the first one, Haydn, second one,
Mozart,
and last one?
Beethoven.
Nice. Can we say where was Haydn born?
Austria.
Austria, correct. Where was Mozart born?
Austria.
And where was Beethoven born?
Germany?
Correct. Germany. Very good, very good. Very good. That will be all for today's class. And in the next class period, we will listen to the works of these three composers so we can have a better understanding of